We're joined by Joe Cunningham, National Director of No Labels and a former Democratic Congressman from South Carolina. Welcome to Square Off.
Thanks for having me.
So give us the No Labels elevator speech. Why is No Labels needed at this time?
Well, I think the numbers speak for themselves. The majority of Americans do not like these two presumptive nominees, and so for the last year plus, No Labels has been working to get on the ballot in all 50 states plus DC to give voters another option, because I think it's very evident that folks are just unhappy with these choices. We're on about a dozen states right now, look to be on about 20 by the end of the year. We're on the ballot here in Arizona, and again, we're fighting to give Americans the choice that they deserve.
I wonder what your assessment is of the political news of the week. Start of the week with a poll showing Joe Biden not doing well in swing states. Then we had the debate, the Republican debate. That didn't come off so well for the Republicans, perhaps. And then you had the results of Tuesday's election that appeared to show, maybe Biden does have some strength. What's your take on what happened?
Well, I mean, these elections on Tuesday, I think, speak to more on the state level. Like, I don't see them as a barometer one way or another. And these polls that we're seeing on Biden and Trump, they line up with what we've seen for the last year and a half, which is, a lot of Americans are scratching their heads right now thinking, we're such a large and incredible country, and these are the best options that we have right now. Most Americans are somewhere near the middle, and they want new leadership, and I think they want to turn the page. And again, No Labels is stepping up and filling this void and offering people that option.
So you mentioned No Labels is on the ballot in Arizona. 4 million registered voters here. About 18,000 have registered with No Labels. That is 0.5% or so of registered voters. Is that a movement? Does that tell us this is working? Because it's not taking off.
Well, look, No Labels has been around for over 12 years. And so when you go around the country, when I go around the country speaking to people, more and more people know who we are and what we're doing. And we've been around for a dozen years, mainly operating within Congress. When I served, I was a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which No Labels helped start.
With Kirsten Sinema?
Yeah, well, yeah.
She was a congresswoman.
Exactly, yeah. And Sinema moved over to the Senate side when I was coming into the House. But we worked with moderates like her, like Joe Manchin, Susan Collins, all the folks over on the Senate side who wanted to bridge that partisan divide. I was able to get two of my bills through a divided Congress and signed into law by President Trump because I was working in an organization and in a caucus that valued bipartisanship. And I think, where we are as a country, most people are somewhere near the middle. They're not off the majority of the country is not off to the far left or the far right. And No Labels is stepping up and giving that common sense majority a voice, because a lot of people feel either politically homeless or they feel like they're not represented. So they should have a voice, and that's what we're doing.
So let's talk about the questions about No Labels. You say voters want this choice. So do donors who have helped to fund No Labels getting on the ballot. Who are the donors who want this?
No Labels, again, it's been around for 12 years, and some of these questions that come up now, I find a little bit interesting about the timing, because we've been operating in this space for over a dozen years.
But now you're putting up a presidential candidate, so the game has changed.
We're putting up a ticket. We're not going to be running a campaign. And I think, whoever runs a campaign, whether it be a super PAC, and obviously the presidential election, they should abide by the letter of the law, right? No Labels is C4. It's a nonprofit. All we're doing is securing the ballot line, and we're operating like a C4. And this goes back to, a lot of people want to say, who are the donors, this or that, in an effort to intimidate the people that are working to try to get another option. People have been very, very vocal about that. And this goes back to the Supreme Court case, Alabama versus the NAACP, where the Supreme Court ruled that, no, you can't intimidate people, and you can't force people to show their roles or their members or their donors in this realm of C4s.
But isn't that a fundamental piece of information? You're asking voters to come along before they even got involved. There's some people who they don't know, whose identities they don't know, who want this. It's being presented as a centrist organization, right? No Labels. How do they know this is truly a centrist organization, that the people behind this are truly centrist?
Well, take a look at the organization. I'm a former Democratic congressman.
But it takes money to get the organization off the ground,
It does take
right?
money.
And for example, Harlan Crow's name has been mentioned as a donor. I don't know to what extent. Is that accurate?
I mean, I can't say whether it is or it isn't. Again, we don't release the names of our donors. But I would tell people this. Look at who's involved in it. Look who's putting their names out there, whether it be Senator Joe Lieberman, Dr. Ben Chavis, a civil rights hero. Again, I'm a former congressman who voted to impeach Trump, who voted, to put country ahead of party. The group was started by Nancy Jacobson, former finance chair of the DNC, and worked for President Bill Clinton. So a lot of these allegations are coming out to try to discredit it. And again, we've been around for a dozen years. I would say look at our victories over in the House and through the Problem Solvers Caucus.
But this is a different thing.
But again, to your point, yes, when that campaign is launched and run, people deserve to know who's funding the campaign, who's funding the super PAC. But again, getting the ballot line, just like some voting rights groups or other nonprofits or C4s, you're not required to disclose your donors and these groups that have come after us and trying to undermine our efforts. Again, we're exercising.
They're just looking. Voters want transparency.
We're exercising our First Amendment right. Mm-hmm. And again, when a ballot line is launched, when a ticket is launched, they'll abide by that. But again, we're just securing the ballot right now.
So No Labels is suing Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes right now. What's behind that lawsuit?
Well, you're talking about No Labels has been very clear. We're running this at the presidential level. We're not interested in fielding candidates in all areas, and so they're my understanding, and I can let the attorney speak more to it. But my understanding is that there is an individual who's trying to get on the ballot in multiple states, and we're trying to protect our ballot line because we're offering it to president, vice president ticket.
The question is, the petitions that were circulating to get No Labels on the ballot here said there would be primary candidates. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, and again, our attorneys on the ground have been dealing with this. So I would defer to them as speaking to the legalities of that. But operating in 50 states, 50 different jurisdictions, plus DC, and getting on the ballot is obviously an arduous task. And so again, we defer to our attorneys as it relates to those specifics.
And just to finish that part of the conversation, Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, who did allow No Labels on the ballot after the petitions were filed, said he believes this is part of a plan. No Labels is resisting because, quote, it might actually hook them into reporting their finances. They want to manipulate the system that way, so I basically told them to pound sand. That's a quote he gave to the New Yorker. Any response?
No, I don't have any interest in going tit for tat. What I will say is this. We've been complying with the rule of law in our efforts to get on the ballot in all 50 states, plus Washington, D.C., and here's what we're speaking for. We're speaking for the vast majority of Americans who are disenchanted with this partisan environment and who want another choice. And again, when 2/3 of America wants another choice, the question becomes who's speaking up for them. And so we're stepping up to fill that void, to offer Americans a choice. And that should be something that we all celebrate.
So my understanding is you plan an April convention to select a nominee?
We're in the process of finalizing what that looks like as far as recruitment and selection, but look to have a named ballot by sometime next spring. That's what I can
sometime next spring. What are the trigger points along the way? You have 12 states right now. You want to get to 50. If you don't get to 50, is this going to happen? Will there be a candidate?
We've got a strategy to get on all 50 plus DC. A lot of states don't even allow you to get on the ballot until 2024. There are some states that don't even allow a group. The candidates themselves will have to apply. You asked the trigger point. We're waiting to find out whether or not this is a Trump-Biden rematch. We've been very... It looks like
it. Sure
right?
looks that way. I mean, anything can happen in the next 12 months.
Exactly. And historically speaking, though, by Super Tuesday, the die's been cast, and we know who the presumptive nominees will be. So that's when we talk about trigger point. That's one thing in place because we're set on running this ticket under two conditions. Number one, Americans have to want another choice, and if Trump or Biden or both fall off and they're replaced by candidates who the majority of Americans want to vote for instead of vote against, then we'll stand down. Or if our pathway to victory closes up, and our modeling and our polling shows that we have a pathway to the 270 electoral votes.
No Labels has a pathway to 270 without a candidate who won't be named until April.
When our polling and data shows, are you open to voting for a bipartisan ticket? The ceiling was so high. And again, let's remember that in a majority of states, 48 out of 50, in order to win all electoral votes, you just need the plurality, biggest slice of the pie. So in a standard duopoly, you need 50% plus one. In a three-way race, that number can drop down to 35.
So if you don't get to 50, will there be a candidate?
If you don't get to 50 states?
Stay on the ballot in 50 states.
We have a strategy to get on all 50 plus DC. You know, if that strategy or if that pathway closes down, then we're not interested in running. We're not interested in being a spoiler or, you know, coming on and taking votes from one party or another. And so when people talk about a spoiler, that's usually in regards to fringe candidates. You know, people who take overwhelmingly from one side or another, like a Jill Stein or Ralph Nader. Our number suggests we draw evenly from both sides. But I think if we're being intellectually honest, you're not going to know exactly what kind of impact it has until you have names on the ballot. It's a very, you know, you recognize why people don't do this every 4 years, because it is a very cumbersome, arduous, and time-consuming process to get on the ballot everywhere.
And then a monumental task, an expensive task, to run for president.
It is. But, you know, again, looking at these current choices, and I think the viewers would agree, nobody's thrilled to go to the polls in November. People want another option, and we're prepared to give it to them.
Got to end it there. Joe Cunningham, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.